Hi, my name is Mike Sanders, and today we're going to talk about Netflix's move to the cloud. So today what I'm going to cover is the reasons for the move, who Amazon Web Services are, which is basically Amazon's cloud offering, how Netflix's new infrastructure currently looks, and what actually resides in their current infrastructure, some ways you can set up your own personal cloud, and some helpful links. Okay, so first off, what exactly did Netflix move to the cloud, and where did they move it? Well, Netflix moved their video on demand service, which is the service that you can use to essentially watch anything you want on their website at any point in time by streaming it. They moved these services over to the Amazon cloud, which is Amazon Web Services. So first off, I want to discuss the nature of Netflix's business model. Netflix was a media content delivery system. They used to send Blu-rays and DVDs in the mail. They switched over to streaming because they realized eventually people might move away from optical media. And their streaming service has been a huge success and has been copied by companies like Hulu and Vudu. So essentially what Netflix wants to concentrate on is moving this media. To do this, they have to expend a lot of money on very expensive servers, and they have to have very high bandwidth needs because essentially most of North America is going to be accessing these videos at any given time, and that is a very big demand. They also have to have IT staff that are ready to maintain this hardware and upgrade it, and they're going to have a lot of IT staff because they're going to have data centers in several locations, and they're going to have a staff that's pretty much on call 24/7 in case anything goes down or when it's time to upgrade things so that there's no service interruptions or loss of data. Okay, so by them moving all of these services over to Amazon Web Services, what they've done essentially is offloaded all this expense into one monthly bill and given them the opportunity to concentrate on really what the real nature of the business is, which is not basically setting up data centers and maintaining these things and worrying about high bandwidth needs. Now, what is the Amazon cloud? Well, the Amazon cloud is what they call Amazon Web Services. Essentially why this is Amazon has set up data centers with several servers in them. You can rent out virtual servers or your own dedicated hardware servers. Basically, you can use these things for things like hosting websites or hosting databases or just depositing data or like videos and pictures. These things will be backed up. You can also use things like data analysis, so you can find correlations between data. They have very high bandwidth because they're expecting people from all over the world to be accessing these servers at any given time, and they have to be available for that or they'll lose business. This also gives people the added benefit of mobility. So if I put up video files on AWS servers, I can essentially access these files from my mobile phone or my laptop at Starbucks. So, it makes things highly mobile. Okay, so what's different now? Well, if you look at my slide, essentially the big difference is that the VOD services are no longer on Netflix servers. They're basically on AWS servers. They still are going to travel to a router, and that router is going to travel to an ISP, and that'll travel out to the internet for the users to access the website and watch the movies. So not really too much has changed as far as the way that the data reaches the internet. Okay, so now what's Netflix's new infrastructure look like as far as their servers? They still retain things like their HR and accounting information on servers that are still in-house in their corporate offices. Everything that was revolving around the video on demand service is now with Amazon Web Services. The only thing they've kept is what they call their content delivery network, which they labeled their CDN Blade. I've included a link to people to check out the specs on the CDN Blade. This CDN Blade essentially has all of the media that they use to rotate in and out of this website that you can watch anything you want. when they put up new movies or when they pull down ones that people aren't watching very much of. That all comes from the CDN blade. This CDN blade is kept in-house and is backed up by them, which is to be understood because it's essentially a very important part of their video on demand service, which is a big part of their business model now. Okay, so how can you set up your own personal cloud? Well, you can use the cloud. Google has an offering. Microsoft has Azure. Amazon has AWS. There's a bunch of other options. If you Google them, you can find one. I've included a link that will explain to you how to use AWS to set up streaming. However, I've also provided a handout that has the same information as the website. You can also just use any computer to share information on a home network, or to the internet for that matter. It's really just a matter of sharing the folder out to the network and then giving the proper security permissions. A quick Google will explain how to do this. It's not very hard. You can also buy something called network attached storage. Some of this network attached storage by one company specifically named Buffalo will give you a website that will allow you to access this network attached storage. What network attached storage is essentially just a hard drive in an enclosure that plugs directly into a switch or a router. Okay, so let's talk about accessibility. If you want to access your home network, you have to have an IP address that most people have is dynamic, which means it changes whenever the address needs to be moved around for whatever reason. You cannot always find the IP address, or let alone most of us can't even remember our IP address, so we use things called domain names. You can get a service called Dynamic DNS that basically is a domain name like google.com. It will track your IP address and link to that IP address every time that it moves. Service is not very expensive. It's like $5-10 maybe a month, sometimes a year, depending on who or where you're going. You can use that domain name then to connect to your home. Now, a word about security. If you're going to do something like this, you do not just want to connect to home. You want to use something called a virtual private network. What that is essentially is basically an encrypted tunnel that you're using. So like, let's say we connect from Starbucks, which also is not highly recommended to connect to secure information from, but if you were going to do something like that, you basically create this encrypted tunnel that nobody can essentially listen in on any point in the communications path to the house. Also, a word about backups. If you're going to be hosting your own media, you want to back this media up. Hard drives are the #1 hardware failure inside of a computer. Now, I've provided some helpful links. The first link is a link for the CDN Blades specs. Also discusses some of Netflix's business strategies. The second link is for the Amazon Web Services offerings. Third link is about how to make the streaming service with AWS, like I talked about before. The fourth link is something called Plex. Now, Plex is something that you can use in your own house to set up a website that works just like Netflix's website. It's completely free. You can get clients for it that can work on a PS3 or an Xbox 360, a Blu-ray player, or Roku. Sometimes these clients cost money, but the server is free. I think I spent $5 to get my Roku 2 running with Plex, and it'll host out like your own videos, movies, pictures, what have you. You just point the website, add some folders on a computer, and then it hosts it. It gives you the movie poster and everything else that goes with it. Okay, so today we covered Netflix's move to the cloud, the reasons they moved, who Amazon Web Services are, how this changes the way things look now, Netflix's current infrastructure, some ways that you can set up your own personal cloud, and some helpful links. Thank you for your time.